Hey, what's going on, guys? This is AndrewChicken, and welcome back to another video. In the Wild Horde update, we got a massive item store rework, and in that rework, Haven got split into two brand new items, Armor Plating and Arcane Warding. Both these items seem pretty simple on the surface. Armor Plating reduces the damage you take from in-hand weapons by 24%, and Arcane Warding is slightly cheaper and reduces the damage you take from abilities by 36%. But, like most things in Paladins, not everything is as straightforward as it seems. And there are a lot of very weird edge cases that make it confusing whether you should actually buy Armor Plating or Arcane Warding. So in this video, we're going to break down exactly how you can determine whether something is ability damage or weapon damage, because there are a lot of very weird interactions in this game. So let's get started by showing how most champions work with these items. Your left click is, of course, your weapon damage. Everyone's left click is exactly the same. It is indeed weapon damage. Shooting the Victor, shooting the Ying, yes, this is weapon damage. And you can tell when something is weapon damage when it applies Cauterize, and it's also affected by certain buffs such as Lifesteal and damage amplifiers like Wrecker and Furia's ult. This is excluding Trigger Scent because Trigger Scent increases the damage of abilities and weapons. But stuff like Furia ult, Tyra's Hunter's Mark, etc., those only increase the damage of your weapons. So something is a weapon attack if those sources increase the weapon damage, right? So yeah, if we buy Life Rip with Vic, obviously we're going to start healing when we shoot this Ying with his rifle. But when it comes to the grenade and the ultimate, those are abilities. Boom. No Cauterize, no Lifesteal. No Cauterize, no Lifesteal. Those are abilities, and so, to counter the grenade and the ultimate, you would buy Arcane Warding. To counter the rifle, you would buy Armor Plating. Now, let's take a look at someone who has a bit more of a confusing split, and that is Drogos. So, obviously, left click is indeed a weapon attack. Look at that, we're getting Lifesteal from that, it's applying Cauterize, it is a weapon attack. And the Fire Spit, when you explode it like this, is obviously ability damage. That would be countered by Arcane Warding. But what happens when we use the Salvo? Is this an ability or weapon attack? Well, look at when we shoot this Fernando. We get Lifesteal and we apply Cauterize. The Salvo is indeed a weapon attack, and that's because the Salvo serves to modify his existing weapon to do something slightly different. But at the end of the day, it's still shooting a rocket that's coming out of his rocket launcher, so that is a weapon attack. And this is also the case for many other characters, which we will get into later. There are a few more things to talk about with Drogos, though. What happens if you fire spit on someone directly, and then you shoot them? Well, that serves to simply boost the damage of your weapon attack, and so that would indeed be Armor Plating. Although, technically, the impact of the 150 would be affected by Arcane Warding. I don't think you have to worry about buying Arcane Warding for that, though. And then the ultimate, this is an execute. This will do 100% of the target's health as true damage. This, and all the other executes in the game, such as Street Justice, Vora ult, Lex ult, all of those completely ignore all DR items, so you can't buy any DR items to counter that. Let's look at another example of someone who has modified weapon attacks, and that is, of course, Sha Lin. Sha Lin has a bow. He shoots the bow, does a weapon attack. However, when you activate the crippling arrow, that is also a weapon attack. It modifies the weapon to then apply a cripple, but it is still coming from the bow. The rapid shot is also a modified weapon attack. It will apply Cauterize and Life Rip. It's just your bow shooting a little faster. So, all of that gets countered by Armor Plating. And indeed, the ultimate too gets countered by Armor Plating, because all it does is it makes you shoot faster. So everything in Sha Lin's kit gets countered by Armor Plating, even though you would think everything is an ability, right? This is an ability. Clearly. No, it's weapon damage. The only thing that gets countered by Arcane Warding, technically, is the explosion from Sand Trap. As you can see, we do not get Lifesteal nor Cauterize application from that explosion. But obviously, please, it's not worth it to buy Arcane Warding just for the explosion. You buy Armor Plating to counter Sha Lin. One last example of someone who has modified weapon attacks is actually Leon. Now, this is a bit harder to tell because some of her abilities are attached to something like a movement skill, right? This is a dash, but it shoots out a weapon shot in the process. But yeah, indeed, all of these are modified weapon attacks. They all come from her gun. And, yeah, I think most of these actually say, yeah, all of these say, you know, fire off a deadly shot with your weapon, hit all enemies in sight with your rifle. All of these, even in the description, call them weapon shots. And indeed, if we go ahead and re-equip our life rip here, left click, cauterize, life rip. If we do Valor, cauterize and life rip. Grace, cauterize and life rip. Presence, cauterize and life rip. The only thing that is not a modified weapon attack in Leon's kit is the ultimate. No life rip, no cauterize. So you would also want to buy armor plating to counter everything in Leon's kit except the ultimate. Now let's look at a case where something might look like a modified weapon attack, but it's actually not. And that is with Imani. She's got a very weird setup going on. So obviously the frost bolts are weapon damage. Look at that. Applying cauterize, and if we reinstate life rip, we will get lifesteal. However, you'll notice we're playing Splitting Ice. The second bounce is not giving us lifesteal. You only see one plus sign, and you'll also notice on Ying, we're not applying cauterize to her. So already we've got a bit of a confusing time going on, because I guess that's technically a weapon, or technically an ability. But then also, the Frost Bomb, obviously this is an ability, I don't think anyone's confused about that. Let's move over to our Fire stance. Fireballs are a weapon attack. They apply cauterize, they apply lifesteal, and even if we switch over to Pyromania, you'll see, yes, these are weapon attacks. Pyromania just makes it an explosion just like Drogo's rockets. But what about the Inferno Cannon? Inferno Cannon is aimed like a regular weapon attack. It's like you're using Tyra or Victor's rifle. It allows you to fly, but, you know, Leon's ability, that's a weapon attack, and it's also a dash, right? So you can have a movement skill attached to a weapon attack. But no, Inferno Cannon isn't actually a weapon attack. As you can see, no life rip, no cauterize. Inferno Cannon is an ability, even though it looks like a weapon attack. And you can tell because, obviously from what we just demonstrated, but also, right, these are her weapons, the Ice Bolts and the Fireball. The Inferno Cannon is not a fireball. This is a constant beam of fire. It is something totally different, and because it's something totally different, and it's an ability cast on a cooldown, it will not ever be affected by weapon damage. So you'd buy Arcane Warding to counter the Inferno Cannon. And the same goes for the Dragon, which is also an ability. The fire that comes out from the Dragon, this is not even remotely the same as her weapon attack. And as you can see, no lifesteal and no cauterize application. So the Dragon is also Arcane Warding. What about somebody who has two weapons? How does that work? Are both weapons actually weapon attacks, even though they're kind of, you know, weird? Well, yeah, it is actually pretty intuitive. For Bomb King, for example, funnily enough, the actual direct stick is not what applies cauterize with BK. It only does 10 damage, so I don't think you have to be concerned about buying either of these items for the stick. But the detonate, indeed, is a weapon attack. You see it applies cauterize to Fernando. I am out of credits, so we don't get any life rip there. But, yes. You buy armor plating for BK. Very clearly. How about Caspian? Well, is his sword actually a weapon attack just like his pistol? Yes, indeed both they are. Both of them are. Look at that. Cauterize on the pistol, cauterize on the sword. Both of these are weapon attacks. They will be affected by armor plating. But when it comes to Caspian, the Rogue's Tempo, the Dash, and the Ultimate are all ability attacks. I applied cauterize to Fernando there, but that's because I shoot out a regular attack alongside the ultimate projectile. The ultimate projectile itself is, as a matter of fact, affected by arcane warding. Here's another interesting case. Should you buy arcane warding for Koga's claws? This isn't necessarily a case of having two weapons, but rather having a weapon that is equipped when you switch stances. And isn't switching stances an ability? Especially because it drains energy from Koga. Well, let's buy Life Rip and test it out. We have Life Rip 1, and if we go ahead and shoot Fernando, we do get Life Rip, and we do apply Cauterize on the SMGs. And when we switch into the Claw stance, we also Lifesteal and apply Cauterize on the Claws. So yes, indeed, the claws are also weapon attacks that would be affected by armor plating. When you have a stance switcher like this, and we already kind of checked this out with Imani, both of their left clicks like this, right? They are weapon attacks. It is their default weapon for that stance. So in Koga's case, the skewer would be the ability damage. You notice the skewer didn't apply cauterize to any of those people there. So yeah, the skewer is the ability damage for Koga, and that's actually basically it, apart from the ultimate. Now, here's something that seems really intuitive, but it's not. Reload projectiles. There are two of them in this game, Maldamba and Dredge. They both shoot out a projectile when they reload. And they're actually ability damage, which confuses the heck out of me. I don't really understand it. But look at this. Let's relock in our life rip. Okay, so on Fernando here, the spit applies life steal and cauterize. But when we reload, look at this. No life rip, no cauterize. So if you want to counter the stunning projectile from Maldamba when he plays damage, Arcane Warding will actually be your damage reduction versus that. And the same can, of course, be said for Scuttle Dredge. If we pop on over here, click on Scuttle, bada bing, bada boom, and there's our life rip. Left click, applies cauterize and life rip. The reload projectile, no life rip, no cauterize. It's very weird. It doesn't make sense. I don't know why they did it like that. And finally, we can talk about self-damage. Self-damage will actually also be countered by armor plating and arcane warding. Most of the time, you don't really need to worry about this. It only affects a few characters anyways, but just for the sake of testing, we can see that with BK, no armor plating, we will take 225 damage per bomb. But if we heal up and then we buy armor plating at level 3, look at how much less damage we take. Look at that. We just saved basically 100 health there. That's pretty cool. So yeah, as a side effect of you buying armor plating versus other characters, you will thus do a little bit less self-damage with a blaster. But where this really gets interesting is with Nyx. So Nyx's Royal Presence is actually an ability that transfers the damage that the enemies do to Nyx into a damage over time. And that ability does self-damage to Nyx. So, if we buy Arcane Warding on Nyx, we will actually receive less damage in our Royal Presence, giving us basically 36% damage reduction from all incoming damage that is absorbed by the Royal Presence, making this almost, in a weird way, kind of like Mother's Grace Inara. So check this out, we're going to do some testing here. Let's summon the Cassies. What we're going to do is we're going to wait for them to fire a volley. Then we're going to step in front of the volley with no DR and Royal Presence. Boom, like that. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Alright, how much damage did we sustain? 767 health is what we're left on with no DR. Now, if we buy Arcane Warding, you can see that we take significantly less damage. 6, and step away, and now we're left with 2,238 HP. We just saved 1,500 hit points by maxing out Arcane Warding, giving us some ridiculously powerful self-sustain in Royal Presence. Now, I don't know whether this is a bug or not, but regardless, this is pretty freaking cool. So, if you want to buy Arcane Warding on Nyx, it actually makes a lot of sense. Now, what about when we buy armor plating? Well, let's test it out. Boom. Alright, that was 6 shots, and now... oh! 2,571 HP. Bruh. We can almost sort of double dip in the DR, right? Because we can reduce the damage incoming from weapon attacks, right, by 24% from the Cassie. And then we can reduce the damage even further by reducing the damage we take from our own ability, which has converted their weapon damage into ability damage. And also, if we get hit by an ability, let's say, I don't know, a Fire Spit from Drogoz, we'll take 36% less damage from the Fire Spit, and then I'm pretty sure, after that gets converted into ability damage for the Royal Presence, it will be reduced by a further 36%. So, we're actually going to test this. If we do some math, right? Let's say we have a Drogoz Fire Spit affecting us as Nyx with Royal Presence up. So that's 900 damage, right? We want to multiply that by 1 minus 0.36, right? That's the damage reduction from Arcane Warding. So, that is 576 damage. Then, if we multiply that by a further 1 minus 0.36, we will get 368.64 damage. So if this actually double dips, like how we're thinking it does, she should only, eventually, take 368 damage from this fire spit. Alright, so I have maxed out Arcane Warding. Now, we're going to let Drogos do the fire spit. No. Alright, take 2 this time.
Break against my body.
No, why'd you salvo? Okay, 3rd time's the charm. Royal Presence, go! There it is. And I have taken... That looks promising. That looks really promising. I'm going to jump off the map. That'll tell me on the death card now.
An extra
I took 368 damage from the Royal Presence. I converted the fire spit that does 900 damage down to just 368. Oh my god. Ladies and gentlemen, that is insane. Also, one last thing I want to clarify before we talk about when you want to buy both of these items. I want to make sure that you understand that if an ability specifically applies Cauterize, like Burn Monster Tyra, that doesn't make it a weapon attack. To be a weapon attack, it has to come from your in-hand weapon, and it has to be affected by Cauterize, Life Rip, damage amplifiers like Wrecker, like I described earlier. Burn Monster is none of that. Burn Monster is 100% ability damage. It just applies Cauterize on top of that at 60%. It's not even the actual Cauterize that ramps up during the match. It's a separate anti-healing effect. So this is affected by Arcane Warding, not armor plating. Just want to make that very clear. So, when should you buy either of these 2 items then? Well, armor plating is the clear winner of the 2 of these items in terms of its general reliability. Most characters do most of their damage through their in-hand weapons, right? Shaolin, Leon, Strix, Victor, even Tyra, even champions that have a decent ability to weapon split still usually lean pretty heavily in the weapon split. Like Eevee, for example, even if she ults you with Snow Globe, most of that damage is coming from the weapon. So most of the time, armor plating is the way to go. But if you do want to buy Arcane Warding, it is A, on Nyx, like we already described, B, when you're up against a lot, and I do mean a lot of champions that rely very heavily on their ability damage. So, for example, let's say you have a Hurl Dredge on the enemy team. Hurl is an ability. You can see I'm healing there, but that's from a card in my loadout. Just to make it a bit more clear, let's go over to this build, which has no healing on it. Yeah. No Life Rip, no Cauterize from this Harpoon. This is an ability through and through. Because it's not his main weapon attack. With Hurl, it certainly seems like it, but no, it's just an ability. So, Arcane Warding will absolutely destroy a Hurl Dredge. It might not be worth it to buy it for Dredge alone, but consider Dredge paired with another character on the team, like, well, I actually discovered this the other day, Androxus, with Defiant Fist. The Fist is not his main in-hand weapon. It's an ability. It has a very low cooldown. It is indeed an ability. This does not apply Cauterize. Look at that. No Cauterize. Why am I healing from that? I don't even have Life Rip. Oh, I have Vengeance, right. So yeah. With Defiant Fist, you will get a 1k burst. And if you have that 1k burst plus a Hurl Dredge on the enemy team, maybe then it'll be worth it to go for Arcane Warding, because that'll reduce the damage of the punch by 36%, taking it down to less than 700 damage. That's pretty spicy. There are also certain champions who, regardless of their build, just really do a metric crap ton of ability damage. For instance, Betty La Bamba is kind of the reverse of Leon. Her left click is the only thing that is weapon damage. Everything else, this, and of course her ultimate, are all ability damage, making Arcane Warding pretty good against Betty, unless for some reason you are only being harassed by the left clicks. Everything else is ability damage, so if you really want to bully Betty, Arcane Warding, actually kind of makes sense if you're playing against her on a reasonable map like Ice Mines. So, as you can see, the applications for Arcane Warding are very limited. It's very niche. You need to have a lot of champions, multiple champions on the enemy team who rely on their abilities to do damage to actually justify purchasing this item. Even though it is cheaper than armor plating, it is still on the reasonably expensive side, and it counters way fewer things than armor plating. Even though the scaling is so much higher, it's still usually more worth it to go for armor plating. And in general, this patch, if you want to best prepare yourself for these damage reduction items by making sure that you're not countered super hard, you're not putting all your eggs into one basket, then you want to make sure you're playing a champion who does a good mix of both. For example, Damage Lilith does a very good mix of both ability and weapon damage, right? The Hex is ability damage, although I don't think most people care about that. The Swarm, however, is also ability damage, and the left click is obviously weapon attacks. So if we do this, our damage is honestly split about 50-50. Both of these are doing a lot of work. So if the enemies buy armor plating, my Swarm is still going to be doing full damage. If they buy Arcane Warding, my weapon is going to be doing full damage. So they have to buy both items, and that's a ridiculous investment. Or they could just buy one item, and that's Veteran. And that gives them 21% increased base maximum health, which, you know, that generally just makes them a little bit more inoculated versus both sources of damage. But obviously, this doesn't scale nearly as well as armor plating or arcane warding. So that is the third general option if you want to defend yourself versus both sources. Or, just like last patch, you can still stack damage reduction and veteran at the same time if you so choose. But that is generally the strategy if you want to basically make yourself as useful as possible, right? Spreading out your damage into both the ability and weapon categories is the best bet, leading to some very interesting playstyles for some certain characters, where maybe on Drogos, instead of picking Fusillade, maybe pick Combustible, because that way you can get, well, hey, a bunch of ability damage and a bunch of weapon damage at the same time. And if they buy one of those items, your other source of damage will be unmitigated. Also, another side note, Combustible's really good this patch because, well, Unbound doesn't counter the knockback at all of Combustible. So if the enemy team is buying Unbound for a stun or a rewind or a nullify or something like that, your knockback's going to be completely intact. They have to buy Sentinel for that, and it's more expensive than Unbound, so it's more of an investment for them to buy this item to counter the knockback.
Looking good,
Yeah,
babe.
pretty cool. But anyways, I hope you guys found this video to be helpful. If you did, make sure, of course, to drop a like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. I will be making a bunch of guides in Season 7, including some of the sort of mini-guides I already have, like this item guide you're watching right now. So, stay tuned for that, you won't want to miss out. There's a lot of stuff to cover in Season 7, and I'm also starting to make champion guides again, so yeah. A lot of great stuff coming to the channel real soon. Also make sure to check out the Twitch channel and the Discord server, both of which are linked in the description down below. If you want to party up with other players, Discord's a great place to do it, and also if you want to come on over to Twitch, get a chance to play with me, I play with viewers often, or just ask me any question about Paladins you want, Twitch is a good place to do it. You can catch me when I'm live. It's a great place to be. Lastly, if you want to support the channel, please consider checking out the memberships program linked in the description down below. You can choose your price and get a bunch of cool perks in the process, so definitely recommend checking that out. With all that being said, thank you guys for watching. I will see you all next time. Peace out.